everybody. So, when we think about our mentor text this week, Tales That Teach Us, I think of two genres that really do a lot of lessons in the stories. I think of fables, where animals maybe are teaching us lessons, and folk tales, which are told for many, many years by grandparents to their kids, right? As a way of imparting knowledge or sharing stories. So whether it's Head, Body, Legs, or The Village of Moon Rain, or the story we just read, The Hummel Egg. Many of these stories are teaching something, and they've been passed down through the generations. So let's just talk a little bit about folk tales and this genre of traditional literature. So the first thing I'm going to tell you is, what is traditional literature? Remember, a tradition is something that has been done the same way for years, and in many cases from one generation long ago to the next generation to the next. It's passed down in that same way. Folk tales are an example of literature that is passed down. If you're ever wondering what to look for, think about shorter stories with very simple plots. Usually the story is trying to explain something, and the characters in it are not perfect. They're usually fooling someone or learning a lesson the hard way, right? And then we learn a lesson with them in the story. Usually those stories are going to teach you a moral or a theme. Some examples. Little Red Riding Hood, right? That's definitely a story where you learn a lesson. Jack and the Beanstalk. That's a story that's been told for generations. People have passed that story down. And each time they pass it down, it might be a little bit different. Remember when we read the story of Cinderella? And then we found out that Ye Shen is another Cinderella story. It's almost the same story, but with a few changes. Remember, that was the magic fish versus the fairy godmother. The two stories we're reading this week, The Village of Moon Rain and Hummel Egg, are definitely folk tales, and I'll prove it to you. All right, so how do I know that this story, The Village of Moon Rain, was a folk tale? Well, right off the beginning, it explains that long ago the world was very different. So it's explaining something, right? And it's talking about what our ancestors found, what our ancestors did. That's the sort of story that might be passed down. So these are big hints that you're usually dealing with a folk tale, right? I'm going to go ahead and share the story we just read today. Nope. This is another one that's talking about the Village of Moon Rain. And it's explaining that our ancestors planted all these trees, and ever since then, our home has been called the Village of Moon Rain. Right? So definitely a folk tale. Speaking of folk tales, I believe I have a fun one for you on the next slide. Thanks, guys.